Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Recently, the federal government inaugurated an interministerial committee to be chaired by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume. And other members are Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Accountant of the Federation, Governor, Central Bank of Nigeria, Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Finance, Chairman, Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, representative of state governors, and representative of local governments. Now, the committee's primary goal is to ensure that local governments are granted full autonomy, allowing them to function effectively without interference from state governments. Now, this move is in line with President Tinubu's efforts to give appropriate implementation to the provisions of the Constitution, which recognizes local governments as the third tier of government for development of the grassroots. This is what will guide our discussions tonight on NTA Tuesday Live. But before we go into the discussion, let's get to this report by Kenneth Nanim.
The establishment of local government is a global phenomenon. Apart from enhancing development in the grassroots, the essence is also geared towards devolution of powers to enable the locals participate in the management of their own affairs, as the local government is widely known as a vital instrument for rural transformation and machinery for effective delivery of socio-economic services to the people. National development is being canvassed to take off from the grassroots. Section 7.1 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended, guarantees the existence of a democratically elected local government system, with a provision of 774 local governments in the country to operate a uniform system of administration. These constitutional provisions are, however, structured in a manner that empowered the state governments to administer and control them as seemed best for them. Many state governments have leveraged this loophole to usurp the powers of the local governments, as they run a joint account with local governments, in most cases refuse to conduct elections to ensure that only democratically elected officers pilot the affairs of the local government councils, as required by law. Rather, some governors prefer to run the local governments with caretaker committees, a situation that has left the local communities in a sorry state of socio-economic development and infrastructural deficit.
Where we have issues now with the enrollment, retention, and completion rate of education at the grassroots, basic education is suffering. So we do hope that with autonomy, more money will be available close to the people, and we'll be able to collaborate significantly to rescue education.
To correct this anomaly, the federal government in May 2024, through the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation of Justice, approached the Supreme Court on the position of the state governments regarding the autonomy of the local governments. The Apex Court, in a landmark judgment delivered on July 11, 2024, faulted the state governments for exploiting the local government councils. The Apex Court also ruled that 20.6% of the federation account allocation must be directly paid to local government accounts, henceforth bypassing the state control. The decision is aimed at enforcing constitutional provisions that mandate local governments to manage their funds independently for development purposes. The ruling also prohibits the state governments from using the caretaker committee to run the local governments other than a duly elected officers.
The real challenge for growing the country is to ensure that the subnational government works effectively, and that for me is a sense I would look at what the federal government is doing and say it's in the right direction.
To ensure that these bottlenecks are loosened to allow local government have a breath of the full autonomy granted them, the federal government had on Tuesday, August 20, 2024, inaugurated an interministerial committee to oversee the smooth operation of the local governments.
It's not going to be a business as usual. I believe strongly with the political will for the Mr. President under this administration to have pushed for granting the local government autonomy for the local people. It will actually go a long way. If we want to move this country forward, definitely the local government autonomy must be sustained, must be supported.
It is also the expectation of the president, like other Nigerians, that this committee will succeed in this assignment towards deepening Nigeria's democratic process. Meanwhile, guests on Tuesday Live will be evaluating some of these factors that are likely to make or mar local government administration in Nigeria. Kenneth Nanim.
Well, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. As you know, the nature of this program, at some point in time, it will get interactive. It means you can call in and air your views on the matter on ground. But when we get to that point, we'll remind you of the process and procedure. But let's start off by introducing our guests here. I would like to welcome to this program, with us here in our Abuja studio, is Professor Uche Uwaleke. He is a professor of finance and capital, Nasarawa State University. Thanks for being here, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. My pleasure.
Right. Okay. Also joining us from our Kaduna Center is Professor Muhammad Kabir Isa. He is a professor of governance and development. He's on sabbatical at the Department of Political Science and Defense Studies at the Nigerian Defense Academy, Kaduna. He's at our Kaduna Network Center. Prof, good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
The program. Thank you.
Okay. And I think also joining us via Zoom is Professor Gwemiga Afolabi. He's head of Department Political Science, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Good evening, and you are most welcome.
Well, let's start this discussion by going to our Kaduna Center. And Professor Muhammad Kabir Isa, you've done quite a lot on local government administration, on governance issues. So we'd like you to start this conversation by telling us, if you will, what your initial, feelings were when the Supreme Court delivered that judgment. It was, of course, an affirmation of what we already know is contained in the Constitution. But it needed the apex court to now state this in no unmistakable terms. And what were your feelings when this judgment was delivered?
Feelings were that of excitement and elation, and I was, given that over the years we've studied in my former department at Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, Department of Local Government and Development Studies. We've done a lot of research and studies, and we've seen the downward turn of events at the local government level. And so for us, this is a turning point, just like the events of 1976 that saw to the unification of the local government structure, function, and operation. The Supreme Court judgment of July 11 is a turning point and a landmark decision that turns around the fortunes of the local government. So we took the information with excitement, with a lot of expectation. Be that as it may, there are a lot of gamuts and dynamics and dimensions to autonomy. Autonomy has, you can talk about political autonomy, you can talk about financial and funding autonomy, and you can talk about administrative and functional autonomy. Now, what we have seen is the financial and funding autonomy that the Supreme Court has granted the local governments in Nigeria. However, there are still gaps of the political and the administrative dimensions of the autonomy for local government. So again, with the turns of events and how things pans out, would see what would happen. But at the base of it, at the foundation of all of this, if you like, dimensions of autonomy, is the funding and the finance, which the Supreme Court has granted. And so we are looking out for what would happen to, the fortunes of local government in the next decade to come. However, the struggle to grant this autonomy to local government is something that has taken 2 decades. The problem and the fortunes of local government started in 2003, when the tenure of the local government chairmen that were appointed in 1998 ended in 2003. They had spent 4 years. And since then, you find out that local government now spend 2 years, 3 years, depending on the state laws that existed and the misapplication of Section 7 and Section 8 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. And many of these State House of Assembly tend to forget that there is a Decree 36, which is called Local Government and Basic Transition Decree. In it, the operations and the executive power of the chairman and the legislative power of the local government council are spelled out in chapters 1 to 6 of that decree. Even though many legal luminaries will say that decree ceases to hold any substance. But in it captures a lot of the provisions that are missing in the 1999 Constitution. It is in that decree that the tenure and the procedures, the executive powers of the chairman are spelled out. The procedures for impeaching a chairman are spelled out in the first provisions of that decree. And it was that decree that gave life fervent to 1999 Constitution. So with the turn of events in 2003, which led the federal government then under President Obasanjo to commission the 11-man technical committee to look at the turns of event. And it's as a result of that 11-man technical committee that a bill was sent to the National Assembly, and then it was assented to in 2004, the Revenue Monitoring of Local Government Allocation 2004. But the decision of the Supreme Court annulled that act of Parliament in 2006, and so that threw us backward, to where we are. But thank God, with this recent decision, we are looking forward to a great turn of event in the fortunes of local government. However, I would like to observe that with the committee that the federal government just recently commissioned, I think they should engage the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit into that committee, the ICPC and the EFCC, because they have engaged the local government in the last couple of years. And it's the NTA that has brought the issue of local government to agenda status in recent times. Prior to this Supreme Court judgment, the state governors have taken the federal government and the NFIU to court, and the court threw away the case. And so the case was thrown away a week before the Supreme Court judgment. So the NFIU has made a lot of gains in terms of engaging the local governments and the state governments in granting autonomy to the local, particularly the issue of funding and finances of the local government. So we're going to see a lot of activities with this landmark judgment in terms of the NFIU, that is the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, the ICPC and the EFCC. For me, these are the very core agency of federal government. Now, at the state level, we need the Office of the Auditor General for local government to be active. We have to have that sector of the state to be very active in order to checkmate. We need quarterly report, we need monthly report, and we need biannual and annual report of the Office of the Auditor General. Now it has low manpower, not funded, and in fact it is just operating in the shadows of its activities and its function. So with these activities and the funds coming to local government, because we have seen a significant increase also with the oil subsidy removal, we have seen a significant increase in the funding accruing to local government. Some local government get as high as 300 million naira in a month. So we need to engage the local government because a lot of funds will now be going straight to the local governments, and we need to guide them. Now, many of the local governments don't even know that there is an existence of what we call the financial memorandum, which guides the activity of the financial activities of the local government. And that is what the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, the ICPC, and the are using to engage the local government. And unfortunately, many stakeholders of the local government don't even have a copy of the financial memorandum. They've not even engaged the copy of this document, which is the set guideline that engages the daily operations of the local government in terms of its receipt and expenditure of funds accruing to the local government and how to manage and keep custody of these funds. So we need to engage the local governments to get acquainted with the financial memorandum and get in tune with its provisions. And so we need to have copies of it. It's not available. I've sampled a lot of local governments. The copies of this financial memorandum are not there. The last time they were supplied to the local governments were in 1997-98. So with many retirements and turnovers, most of these documents have disappeared. So we need to get the local governments to engage. Now, very importantly also, in the ministry...
Prof, you have set the baseline for what it used to be and how we got to this position. So thanks a lot. There's so much which we'll take from how you've just introduced this, because you've given us the background, what it was before and what led to the current status. And a lot of what you have come up with now will still be subject to more discussion on this forum. So thank you so much for laying this foundation and giving us this background. Just before I go on to our next guest, I think at this time we're also being joined by Dr. Tunji Abayomi. He's a constitutional lawyer. He joins us from our Lagos Network Center. Now, Dr. Abayomi, good to see you. Lawyer, he joins us from our...
I'm sorry I was a little late. I was bad traffic next to at the junction of Federal Palace Hotel.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll get to you somehow. But back here in the studio in Abuja, I have with me Professor Uche Waleke, the Professor of Finance and Capital. Now, it's all about the money to a great extent when you look at what has been happening. Some would like to call it a capture of the finances and funds that should honorarily go to the local governments direct. And this is why some say the subnationals, the state governors are holding on tight and not letting off, even in the face of this decision. But let's hear your views first.
Yeah, thanks so much, Cyril. Well, let me join millions of Nigerians to salute the decision, the judgment of this, by the Supreme Court to grant financial autonomy to local governments. The local government is a very important tier of government because that's the government that's right there, at the grassroots. And if you look at other federations, whether you're talking about India or even in the US, you realize that that local government system is quite strong, unlike what we have here. Now, if you look at the Constitution of the 1999 Constitution, the fourth schedule, it has laid out a number of functions for the local governments, including the provision of primary health care, including even the responsibility for primary education. And if you look at the residual list, you will find responsibility for sanitation, waste disposal, including infrastructure, in the local government. So there are a number of functions that the Constitution has assigned to local government. But everybody agrees, it's a unanimous opinion that our local governments have not lived up to expectation. And that's primarily because of the fact that they are financially constrained. Now, the same Constitution also gives them avenues, sources for funds. These sources include both internal, that's the IGR effort. Of course, they are allowed to collect some taxes and levies, whether it's tenement rates, taxes on kiosks, on shops, and so on. Okay, and then apart from the money, are also allowed to collect the internal. There's also the external sources. External, largely the allocations. All right. Under the allocation, the local governments are entitled to 20.6% of the FAC revenue. The FG gets, I think, 52.6. Right. The state governments get 20.7, and local governments 26. 20.6. Okay. Now that's for the vertical allocation. Now under the horizontal allocation, the same money is also shared using 40% on the basis of equality of states, 30% on the basis of population, okay, 10% IGRO effort, another 10% social development factor, all right, and then another 10% for landmass, okay. Now apart from that, local governments are also entitled to the VAT. The VAT is collected by the Revenue Service. And 35% of VAT is also given to local governments. But all of those funds, when they when they are being distributed, they enter the state joint local government account, okay, which of course is a creation, as a matter of fact, is a creation of Section 162, subsection 6 of the Constitution, okay. But that account has always been, if you like, not at the disposal of the local governments, okay, and that is why you find that today, if you go to a typical local government, council, you don't find any activity because they are constrained, financially. All right. Now, this is one area where, if you have activity, you are likely to reduce youth restiveness. You are likely to reduce rural-urban migration. Okay, and a whole lot of advantages that come with empowering local governments, financially. So for me, I think it's a very good, development, and I also think it will also help to ensure that when we talk about, you hear people say we can't feel the GDP. GDP is growing, but we can't feel it. It is because it's not trickling down. The only way it can trickle down is when local governments are empowered. When GDP translates to revenue, and that revenue also gets filters to the local government, areas. And that's why I think this decision, is in the right, is very, very correct, and it's a welcome development.
All right, we'll come back to you. The question of if you can really get your way through financial autonomy, when, of course, both administrative and political autonomy would have a lot to do to guarantee the sale of financial autonomy. Well, we'll come back to that momentarily. But let's go over to Professor Gbemiga Afolabi, who is on Zoom, joins us from Ile-Ife. Prof, what are your thoughts? Sorry, Prof, you would have to unmute your audio. If you could just unmute your audio.
Okay.
Right.
Once again, thank you for having me, and good evening, Nigeria. I want to say that the Supreme Court judgment is actually a welcome development because local government in Nigeria has passed through a lot of so many junctions that are that predates even the federalism that we practice in Nigeria. And the Supreme Court judgment, even though more emphasis was laid on the financial, but there are three other key areas that we must also consider as a political scientist. The first is the legal framework. Of course, we know that Section 7, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution gave the local government their existence and, of course, guaranteed their autonomy to a large extent. But beyond the legal framework is the political independence, and we must take cognizance of that. Now, with that pronouncement, there's a big question mark on the viability of state independent electoral commissions because they have to go. It's either INEC comes on board or the National Assembly creates a new electoral body to conduct elections for those local government, the 774 local governments. And they also talk about the financial management. Financial autonomy is also very key, not just in terms of what the professor of finance have said, both the internal and the external, but the ability to manage their finances independently about themselves. And then the third aspect, apart from the finance, is the revenue collection. We must also take cognizance of the independence that comes with revenue collection and its usage, the ability to budget independently of the state government. All these four criteria, the legal framework, the political independence, the financial independence, and of course the revenue collection ability, must all be looked at holistically, understand the importance, and of course go into the enforcement of the Supreme Court judgment. Thank you.
Okay. Again, the question of financial autonomy. Yes, they will have the free hand to increase the IGR, but there is still that hanging shadow. They want to do the political economy, and it's a good thing you've mentioned something about whether or not the state electoral commissions would be relevant to this new arrangement. But we'll come to that. Dr. Tunji Abayomi is in our Lagos Network Center. He's a constitutional lawyer. And, well, the Constitution spells out a number of things. But you see, even with the decision, with the pronouncement of the Supreme Court, it would seem that not a few states are still holding back. What do you think is responsible for that, and how can this whole thing be enforced?
I think it's important to appreciate that we have three governments in Nigeria, and perhaps I should say three dependent governments. Government in a democracy is more or less like the human body. You could look at the head as representing the federal government, the waist representing the state government, and the feet representing local government. It's impossible to avoid interdependence, just as it is impossible to avoid interdependence in the human body. So it is in the political body. But I think the whole essence of this autonomy is to separate activities and to ensure that the local government carries on its own affairs independent of the waist, that is the federal government, and independence of the head, that is the state government, and independent of the head, the federal government. But in my view, it is impossible, literally impossible, to avoid interdependence of some sort. What the Supreme Court has done is to assure fiscal autonomy, which is even essential for the level of independent action, because the Constitution is not short in terms of the provision for local government. I think the principal problem within the local government with regard to issue of autonomy is the inability to control its wealth and its income, control its expenditure and its revenues. It is impossible to, in us that was to guarantee to it the responsibilities that is given to it by the Constitution, contested Constitution, without this fiscal autonomy. That's the essence, I believe, of the decision. And I believe that because of the complex nature of dependency and independency, because it's actually an admixture of both. Independency in the sense that specific duties are allocated to local government. Dependency in the sense that the local government is a part of the political body. Like I said, the head, federal, the west, state, and the fifth, local government. I believe that the whole idea of setting up this body to look into the issue is an appreciation of the delicacy that is obviously that is clearly there when you're dealing with this, rather, vital issue.
Dr. Abayomi, we'll return to you. But in addition to the discussions, we also have a number of reports, and I think we have the firsts in this series of reports from Lagos.
With the long-awaited victory in autonomy of local government administration finally secured, it is time to transform all the lofty dreams of economic development at the grassroots into reality. For those that have anxiously looked forward to a day the local government will receive its financial freedom to exist as a third tier of government, the understanding is deep, not only because it is the closest to the people, but this new experience will bring back memories of projects and wealth creation that once existed at the local areas.
If there's transparency, if there's accountability, if there's full disclosure with the way, with respect to the ways and means with which allocations are disbursed and applicants are appropriated, and if there's open book management, we can begin to see a new tide in Nigeria that will make sure that development is grounded at the grassroots and saturates the entire nooks and crannies of the 774 local governments.
Beyond drawing imaginary pictures of growth emphasized are more compelling issues revolving around governance and administration at the local councils.
95% of the people that are leading the local government were not there because they were the best people, but because they were chosen by the governors to become local government chairmen. So some of them, the quality of that leadership is suspect. And then with time, we must be able to improve on the quality of the people that emerge as leaders. Otherwise, you get the wrong leader, and then you decide to move these billions of naira to that wrong leader. What do you think is going to happen?
Aside the notorious fact that the ruling party usually sweeps all the available chairmanships and councillorship seats, there have been unfortunate instances where opposition candidates who manage, and I say straight, to emerge winners are not sworn into office. There is also the need to introduce measures to ensure uniformity and security of tenure for local government officials across the country.
Each local government should have a mechanism for awarding contracts, for purchases. There must be a proper procurement mechanism in place. So by doing this, so local government cannot just abuse that fund. And I want to suggest that EFCC and for Bureau of Public Procurement should have offices in all the local governments so they can guide them, because this is a huge money coming from the federal. Those local government chairmen, they are not used to this amount of money. Imagine the local government collecting 50 million, 100 million every month, now receiving 1 billion, 10 billion.
The consensus going forward is that since local government is pivotal to economic rejuvenation in Nigeria, then it is the responsibility of the citizenry to ensure that the financial autonomy works in tandem with constitutional demand. In Lagos, Michael Olale.
All right, our next report comes from Kaduna.
Nigeria operates a federal system of government comprising of the government at the center, the subnational as well as the local government, which is the closest to the people. But for many years, lack of its financial autonomy has hindered development at the grassroots level. However, the recent efforts to grant them financial autonomy is now giving a number of Nigerians hope.
A big thank to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for making it a reality. There is Attorney General that went to Supreme Court for interpretation, and the Supreme Court gave their verdict, which is in favor of the citizen. And in the verdict, in the line of the verdict, that allocation of local government should be directly credited into local government account. Fantastic.
It's a plus for Tinubu. It's a plus for him here. But you see, we are more interested in what will work. And if it will, then fine. So at this point in time, our fingers are crossed. My own is crossed. We are waiting to see what will be. I am optimistic it will work.
The stakeholders are hopeful that the financial autonomy will lead to development at a grassroots level, but the citizens must remain vigilant to ensure their funds are not misappropriated.
Citizens are to hone up their local government. That, look, this is my local government. The fund coming into this local government is my money. I must know how one single kobo out of that money is expended. Everybody is running helter-skelter because they want to become local government chairman. And why? Immediately after the ruling. So everybody see local government will have plenty of money now.
They are of the opinion that the commitment of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration to allow local government to control and manage their finances shows its determination to touch the lives of the people at the grassroots level. In Kaduna, I am Muhammad Marajingi.
Okay, and from Kaduna, let's go over to Anambra for this other report.
Anambra State is not left out in the challenges occasioned by prolonged and current culture of joint account instead of local government financing system from the federation account. What was obtained in previous years can be described as suffocating of the local government administration by state governors who were custodians of the local government funds from the federation accounts and staffed the administrators of these funds, thereby reducing them to salary payers. This practice makes their impact no longer felt by the grassroots population development-wise.
So the current wave, the current, force to implement it from development and is democratic as well.
If you are in the grassroots and the local governments were denied their autonomy, you will still be begging everything. Everything you will do, you beg the state to give you.
The best thing that is happening in Nigeria, there are a lot that has gone wrong, especially when the center believes they are the only people that are sane. They are the only people that can manage funds. They are the only people that knows how to be prudent. When in actual sense, corruption is because power is centralized.
The enforcement mechanism put in place by federal government, no doubt, will throw up the much-needed dividends. Again, the social contracts between the elected and governed will be specified as failure to keep faith with electioneering promises will be responded to through the ballot.
Some of them were competing, doing roads, doing covers, rebuilding schools and stuff like that. And I want to believe if the orientation is right this time around, that they may go back to the old way.
The local government, that's the one they call like the municipal elsewhere, where we should have a mayor or local government chairman, then the states, and then the federal government. And if you look at the organogram, like in the health professions, the tertiary institutions, there are secondary health institutions, there are primary health institutions. Primary health institutions are for the local government area. That's where they belong, because these are the people who are closest to the community and who provide health at levels comprehensible to the local man.
The Anambra State government has fixed September 28 for local government election across the state. In Oka, Ngozi, Ukekaru.
All right, listen to the reports from Lagos, Kaduna, and Anambra. Let's get back to Kaduna and Professor Mohammed Kabir Isa, who's in our Kaduna Center. And in your earlier statements, you talked about administrative and political autonomy, and these are key in the setup of things. Now, With so much emphasis on the financial autonomy, the local governments can now be in charge of their finances and their revenues. But the aspect we're looking at here is how much of this influence can be eroded by the political, hold which the governors still have on it. For instance, someone talked about the question of elections into local councils, which are still being handled by state electoral commissions, and where they won't fit into this, except, of course, INEC comes in. But again, there are those Nigerians who would say, well, INEC itself has its own challenges as well at national level. So what are we looking at here?
Thank you very much, Cyril. In a recent dialogue organized by the Nigerian Political Science Association, I presented a paper on the implications of the Supreme Court judgment to local government autonomy. And my concluding remarks were that in the last 2023 election, a lot of hue and cries have bedeviled the role performed by INEC. And I've seen in recent time there is a bill in the National Assembly, I think it's in a second reading. We're trying to establish a parallel body to conduct elections for local government. I think multiplicity or duplicity of function. I don't think we need, personally, as a political scientist and as a student of politics, I don't think, and a very studious student of administration, I don't think we need a parallel body, especially in the spirit and in the wind of cutting down the cost of governance that we are talking about. We don't need a parallel body. What we need to do is to rejig our electoral act and allow INEC to supervise. Because already we've been saying that INEC is overburdened with too much responsibilities and functions in the 2023 election. So why do we want to add more to INEC to conduct local government elections in 774 local governments? We don't need that. I think what should happen is that we should allow, in the spirit and letters of federalism, allow the state governors in conjunction with the State House Assembly to nominate and appoint their state independent electoral commission. Once they do that, immediately after they do that, the commission no longer reports to the governor. The commission reports to INEC. So we rejig our electoral act to give INEC a supervisory role, a monitoring role, an evaluative role, and a collaborative role on the State Independent Electoral Act. So the State Independent Electoral Commission reports to INEC, and so INEC supervises its activities. INEC monitors. Now, if the State Independent Electoral Commissions err in law, INEC can raise a report for it to be disbanded before a court, and a court can sack the State Independent Electoral Commission. So if there is some form of oversight function by INEC on the State Independent Electoral Commission, we are likely to see a fair play. Now, because the governors control the appointments of the State Independent Electoral Commission, they appoint them, they control them, and they fund them. So they tend to, muzzle them, and then, and then they have a very strong hold on the political parties. They just fill in blanks and appoint names, and on the day of election, it's a charade. People just come in, queue up, and go. They announce numbers, and that's all. So what we see is a charade. But INEC, in its quest to maintain its credibility, will not allow such shenanigans and such charade to take place under its guise. So the State Independent Electoral Commission will report to INEC. And so, again, this calls to the level of political culture, development of the political culture in the country. We have politicians, but we don't have ethics, political ethics. We don't have political culture. Our politicians lack the etiquette of politics that are found all over the world. And this is what accounts for the type of politics we see in the country and in the corners. And no wonder you see people stealing ballot boxes. It's very difficult to announce results. INEC does not steal ballot boxes. The politicians organize the stealing of ballot boxes. It is the politicians who corrupt the process, not INEC. INEC is just providing the platform. But we have politicians who lack political etiquette, who lack the culture of politics, abound all over the world. So our politicians are not politically mature to inherit the culture of politics that we've seen abound all over the world. Now, with the question of administrative autonomy, the local governments, have over the years suffered, some form of, if you like, muzzling of their operations. If local governments do budget, for example, the budget must go to the Ministry for Local Government, the budget must go to the Public Accounts Committee, the budget must go to the Committee on Local Government in the State House Assembly, and so on and so forth. Every now and then that the local government wants to implement a project, they must go to the state government for approval. That is not what the local governments are established to do by law. The local governments must enjoy some level of administrative and operational autonomy. The governors appoint secretaries from all over, and then they impose them on the system. And so they do not allow the Local Government Service Commission to do its job of posting the requisite manpower and skills. Again, which impinges on the operations and the activities of the local government administration. All of this must stop, because if you grant the autonomy, the funding and the financial autonomy, and that's why I am looking at it from this prism, that apart from the funding and the financial autonomy of local government, we must also look at these other dynamics, these other dimensions of local government operations. There are the political autonomy, the administrative autonomy, and the operational autonomy. So if the funding, the governors will be jigging the administrators. Okay, you allow the politicians, and then they'll make it difficult for the politicians to work by posting people who are allies to the state government. And the secretaries, by role, if you look at the financial memorandum, the treasurer plays a very important key role in the operations of local government. And likewise, the secretary. The chairman does not sign checks. The checks are signed by the secretary to the local government and the treasurer. Now, if the governors control the appointment of who becomes the secretary and approves the appointment of the treasurer, in a way, this control that we are fighting is indirectly back. And again, we must whittle down the role of the Ministry for Local Government in the activities of local government. One must be a constitutionally recognized level of government, take their budget to the ministry, and then from the ministry to the Public Accounts Committee. Budget is passed by the local government council. They can gazette it with the Ministry of Justice, and that is all. But what I will call for is that every local government must go to the public with a budget. They must do consultation. They must engage stakeholders, beneficiaries of their budgets in their local communities. They must translate their budget to local languages in their local communities, within their locality, within their local authority. And then the local government councillors must be engaged. They must go to their wards, engage their wards, and get input from their wards into the budget. And once the local government council, which is the legislative arm of the local government, approves the budget, then the implementation sets in. Then they can go to the State Ministry of Justice to gazette. But I frown at the idea of the local government budget going to the ministry and then going to the State House of Assembly. That is creating bottlenecks, traps, and, if you like, harm in the progress of the local government council.
Okay, let's go back to Professor Uchewu Alike. On the flip side, why would you be so optimistic that with the full implementation of this decision by the Supreme Court, the local councils can now properly manage their finances? After all, there is the argument that even when they were so muscled and the state governors were in full control of the joint accounts, the local councils still had some bit of independence in generating their IGR. And that, from all reports, has not been properly done.
Yes. Well, let me start by saying that I'm optimistic it will work. I think the major step has been taken, which is, providing clarity to the what appears hazy in the Constitution, Section 162, subsection 6, makes it clear that money from the federation account that is meant for the local government should be paid into the local government account. But you now find section 162, subsection 8, saying that any credit standing to the credit of that account, okay, that's the state joint account, now should be distributed, okay, in a manner that is determined by the State House of Assembly. So that's where you have something that appears to be contradictory, but I want to believe that the Supreme Court judgment has laid to rest, that matter, that the money should be paid into the local government account and be managed by, local government, officials. And I think it's something that is going to work because for me, it's also something that's going to empower the local governments to even enhance their, IGR efforts. Okay, I watched a number of videos shortly after that judgment. Videos of local government staff, jubilating, rejoicing all across the country. So that tells you that, the morale of even the local government workers, will be boosted. So it's going to enhance their IGR effort. Remember too, I mentioned earlier that IGR effort is one of the indices, okay, that is also used for the horizontal revenue allocation. Now, elsewhere, you find local government councils, municipals, okay, going all out to even raise money from the capital market, going all out to issue bonds, okay. In India, the urban local bodies, in the US, in South Africa, in China. As a matter of fact, in China, the size of the local government bonds, okay, is now higher than that of the, the sovereign, the central government. So the point I'm making is that we'll get to a point with what has happened. I will get to a point where local governments in Nigeria will also be going to the market to say, we want to raise more capital for infrastructure projects. Okay, as we speak today, we are familiar with the FG going to raise bonds. We are familiar with states, a number of states going to, raise bonds. But only one local government council in Nigeria, okay, has made that attempt. And that was in 1992 by the Lagos Island local government when they went to raise 100 million to finance a complex. So the point I'm making is that with what has happened now, when investors know that local governments are in control of their funds, okay, a local government can now come to the market to say, I want to raise some money. Okay, and on the basis of the SPO, on the basis of the standing payment order, because that's usually the collateral, okay, investors can provide such funds. So for me, it's something that is very very positive. It's a positive development, and as I mentioned earlier, I think it's one thing that will work, provided they have control of their finance. Just as mentioned earlier, in the local government system, the treasurers are very key. You also have the signatories to the account can also be the DAS, Directors of Admin, and the General Services. Okay, these are career civil servants. They are not political appointees. So when you have proper checks, you have proper controls in place around the local government funds, especially with all the stakeholders, with the banks, for example, cooperating, the banks understanding that they cannot honor any check or any request that is coming outside those that have the mandate. That's why I'm saying, it works. There's a limit with this current arrangement. I'm seeing, a limit to the influence that even the governors, can now have. Okay, they will still have influence, but it's going to be curtailed. That's the point I'm making. So what's important is let there be proper checks. Let there be, we have to ensure that financial regulations are working, and the ICPC, EFCC, and so on. Their influence extends beyond the center to local governments. Okay, if they are all activated and are working well, okay, I'm pretty sure that with time, okay, this is something that will be positive for the country in terms of development.
Well, Professor Gbemiga Afolabi, let's come to you and still on that. Some people would ask if these provisions are spelled out and the Supreme Court has made a pronouncement, why would it be necessary to put a committee in place to enforce? Is it that we're seeing that some states might not just comply? And if they do not, what would be the basis of that, since a clear pronouncement has been made by the apex court in the land?
Okay, thank you once again for that question. There are a number of reasons, actually, that some states may not want to go the route of the Supreme Court. As you are aware, for example, look at Oyo State. Oyo State is still going through the local government chairman to argue for monies from the federal government to come into the state, the joint state local government accounts. And that's to tell you that some states will not readily agree with the Supreme Court pronouncement. That's number one. Number two, for the necessity of that particular committee is the issue of information sharing. Sometimes, and in most cases in our country, many people just don't like to obey or adhere to pronouncements, and this is quite common. If you look at the trend, or you do a trend pattern and
oh dear. Well, the signals are frozen there. We lost those signals, but we'll return to Professor Afolabi. Quickly, let's go to Dr. Tunji Abayomi. And along the same lines in this discussion, why would states be reluctant to fully implement this decision as to warrant a committee to be put in place to enforce it?
Look, like I said, the relationship between the various divisions of government is intricate. For example, as at now, Section 7.1 that empowers the states to guarantee democratic local government is still the law of the land. And so, creating an independent local government may be perceived by some states as invading their constitutional rights. In my view, to maintain the level of fiscal autonomy that is intended by the decision of the Supreme Court, you have to reorder quite a number of things, because heretofore the dependency is strong between the several local governments and the state itself. In this regard, we still need to go through some level of definition. Specifically, what does it actually entail? I think the committee that is set up by the president, working through the decisions and the laws, obviously will come up with some guidelines as to how to manage this issue of fiscal autonomy. I believe that a number of states perhaps will see reason when that committee has come up with this kind of report, because in reality, up until now, most states believe that the prerogative over local governments is committed to the states and not the federal government. Like I said, even the issue of election, to be honest with you, like I have said, federal government actually has no voters. I mean, if you're even going to elect the president, you have to calculate votes cast in various wards, which are under local governments and also under the states. I think the resistance of the states basically is the resistance of eroding a significant part of constitutional power that is vested in these states. So it is not unexpected.
Okay, at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, there'll be more on guaranteeing the fiscal autonomy of the local government. So stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly. Thanks for staying with us. Now, this is where the phone lines are open, and that means you can join in the conversation in the studio. The numbers to call will be on your screens. We always advise you, if you're calling in, to turn down the volume of your TV set to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we also encourage you to go straight to the point, not to worry too much about greetings. Just a simple hello would do. And we have a number of reports, a couple of other reports, which we'll take in this segment. And the one we're going to now is from Bayelsa.
Sociologically, laws are made to ensure proper behavior and enhance social harmony in society. Consequently, the issue of enforceability of any law is apparently more paramount than its legislation. No doubt, the Supreme Court judgment granting full financial autonomy to the 774 local government areas in Nigeria is well intended, and it certainly enhance good governance and ensure quality service delivery at the grassroots when enforced.
This autonomy is a welcome development. We cherish it, and we pray that this administration will ensure full implementation of this verdict.
If they just make the rules and set up the committee and they are not working, there is no how this thing can be achieved. But if they work, I think this will really help our country.
However, the enforcement of this judicial pronouncement from the Apex Court, viewed to have become a law itself, is said to likely face the brick walls of conflicting extant laws and the attitude of the members of the political class, many of whom seem to have adopted a culture of impunity that overtly stifles healthy democratic practices and violates the values inherent in any decent political environment.
We must also ensure that the process of their emergence are independent and properly guaranteed, so that we'll have persons who will not be subject to the dictates of state chief executives emerge to manage those funds.
Meanwhile, the Bayelsa State Governor, Senator Doyedri, has expressed commitment to continuous support for the local government councils in the state to deliver on their mandate for good governance and quality service delivery at the grassroots. How that commitment is translated into concrete reality is left to be seen in the not-too-distant future. Enyenegoa, Aya, Brazil.
All right, now let's see this other report from the Plateau and see how it keys into tonight's discussion.
In 1976, Plateau State was created from the then Benue Plateau, and in 1996, Nasarawa was carved out of Plateau State and subdivided into 7 government areas, with the main source of finance generated from local rates on education and property, among others, internally generated within the local government areas and externally from the Federation account. However, over the years, the local government areas had to rely on the joint state local government account, which was introduced in 1981 during the Shehu Shagari regime.
Since most of the local government people are elected either through the influence of the state government or even handpicked by the state government, definitely they have a kind of political allegiance to the state government. So in that case, they give them the food, they give them
the money as it comes. They give them both the stick and the carrot. Without any push, they just establish that culture. And it has become part of the political system, which is not bringing any good result to the democratic governance.
With time, this relationship loss of autonomy by the third tier of government in the state, as the local governments have severally been headed by caretaker committee chairmen instead of elected officials, which in some instances, experts say, has hindered the local government's ability to meet their obligations at the grassroots.
The infrastructure, the health system, the roads, we can see how backward we are. So now that the local governments have been given the autonomy, we believe that they are going to utilize their resources for the development of the local government.
Local government should be local governance, which means there should be some sort of a participatory legislative and political framework at the local government level. We don't want the chairman to just sit down with his councillors and just make all the decisions.
Plateau State, which has 17 local government areas, are currently being manned by caretaker committee chairmen. With this development, the ruling will fast-track and stimulate the growth and development in the local government areas, as allocations from the Federation account goes directly to the account of the respective local governments.
The local government autonomy is not about the headquarters of the local government. It is about the nooks and crannies of the local government where you are going to be the chairman.
Meanwhile, Plateau State Independent Electoral Commission has concluded arrangements to hold local government elections in October this year to bring to an end the administration of local government areas by a caretaker committee. In Jos, Indenyan, and Abujang.
Time for another quick break. Stay with us. All right, I believe we've been able to re-establish links with Professor Gwemiga Afolabi, who is in Ile-Ife. Yes, Prof, there you are. And you were just in the middle of addressing the last question when the signals froze. Right. Right, you have to unmute your audio once again.
Like I was saying, some states might be resistant to judicial pronouncement because they still feel that the Constitution gives them a lot of latitude to also pretend over local governments. And I did say the other time that the committee set up by the federal government is actually rests on three key pillars. The first one is information sharing. I can tell you for free that between 2008 and 2018, over 14.7 billion naira has been shared, has been disbursed to local government, but with nothing to show for it. So the committee needs to work on information sharing, and that's one of the key pillars is working on. Number two is the oversight, to look at how much goes to each local government, how much each local government is able to raise and utilize. And then number three is the issue of advocacy, a change in orientation. My colleague mentioned the issue of political culture the other time. We still need that at the grassroots level, because beyond all this is the issue of corruption. The political culture, is it going to change with this Supreme Court pronouncement? Are we going to have a new crop of politicians at the grassroots level? The situation might just remain the same if we are not careful. And just a few days ago, the ICPC boss was also talking about this, that with this judicial pronouncement that has given financial autonomy to local government, across the country, we might also still be having the same issues. For me personally, I don't see the need to have Ministry of Local Government. It's an aberration in the federal structure. And I also believe that we need INEC to conduct elections at the local level. It doesn't matter as of now whether we have state independent electoral commissions. INEC could do that because SEC has constituted now, presently, they are under the appendages. They are just appendages of the state government. So we need a revisit or we need a revision to revisit all the issues in local governance for that autonomy to actually yield positive fruits. Thank you.
Ready, and calls are beginning to come through. Right. We have Umar from Burning Kebi. He's already on. Umar, you're a regular caller on this program.
Yes. Thank you, Cyril. My name is Umar calling from Burning Kebi. I would like to congratulate the President for this local government autonomy, and by extension, congratulate all Nigerians. And Chief Judge of the Federation, the outgoing Chief Judge is immediately to him. It will be written in gold. And the committee was set up, I learned, by the federal government, but the committee is incomplete to me because the Auditor General of the Federation needs to be there. And Auditor General, his role is very, very important. Then back to the local government autonomy, I need some organization to be abolished, like state INEC. I need state INEC to be abolished. The INEC is not complaining, and it will not complain. By the grace of God, it will not complain. The work is not overburdened on her, on the INEC. And the other thing to abolish is the Local Government Service Commission. There is need to abolish Local Government Service Commission and lead the Ministry of Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs to do its work diligently. Ministry of Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs is okay there. And the other thing is the abolition of the local government. Then the abolition of the Local Government Service Commission, I mentioned it. Then the other issue is the administration of the local government. The administration of the local government can be supervised by the State Assembly. And once that is done, is good for Nigerians. We are very, very happy with this development. We, the grassroots Democrats, we are very happy with this development, and may God continue to bless our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Umar Anachi from Burning Kebi. Professor Waliki, Professor Kabir Isa had suggested an inclusion of the NFIU, the ICPC, as well as the EFCC in this committee. Yes. Obviously, this is alluding to issues with transparency and accountability. And as Professor Afolabi just said, would the pronouncement of the Supreme Court suddenly bring angels into the system that will make it free of corruption and all those things? Would these politicians suddenly, because of course they are at the local council level, they also run for elections, would it now suddenly change everything, their mindset, and now begin to have transparency and accountability at the local level? And we're looking at a tier of government that has been fraught with all kinds of things for all these years.
Yeah, that was why I made the point about that we have financial regulations, and they're working, ensuring that there are controls. The moment you have controls in place in a system, okay, and those controls are working, and you have consequence management. All right, you have sanctions, and you implement the sanctions for breach. That system will work. So for me, one of the things the committee should be doing, okay, should also be to ensure that when funds are released, there is a system, a proper system to manage those funds. Okay, so this is the time to begin to train, training. This is the time to also involve perhaps the World Bank, for assistance. I'm aware that the World Bank used to provide, some sort of assistance, especially at the state. There was this SIFTAS program, State Fiscal Transparency and Accountability, Sustainability, for results, which ended, and they've started another one, SABER, again with the states. But with this fiscal autonomy, it will now be possible for the World Bank and some of these, development partners to intervene directly, at the level of local governments. Now that we have, they now have a fiscal autonomy. Okay, I remember even while I was a finance commissioner in my state, the World Bank, was also intervening. There were, the rural road project under the RAMP project, Rural Access Mobility Project. We had all manner of interventions. We had the new map, okay, the Nigerian Erosion Watershed Management, project. All those interventions, could only be done at this time, okay, because of the absence of the fiscal autonomy. Okay, these agencies can't intervene, can't have these interventions directly at the local government levels, which is why I think it's very important. This has now opened the window for these development partners to now come and talk one-on-one with the local government. So I think it will work, provided these systems are in place. So the committee should be concerned about training, okay, those that will manage those funds, and then putting in place, as I said earlier on, adequate controls, consequent management. Those are the things that will reduce, mainly corruption.
Sylvester is on the line from Jos. Thank you for staying on. Hello, go ahead with a question or comment. Do we still have Sylvester on the line, calling in from Jos?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Right, Sylvester from Jos.
Yes.
If that's you, please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening to you. Can you hear me? Hello?
All right, maybe you might have to call back in just to have that. But again, let's expand this regarding the question of accountability and transparency here. Professor Kabir, how will this play out? Let me give you a scenario which some Nigerians have painted here. Yes, you now have the financial economy, and the governors, you say some, you think some of them are not in a hurry to implement. But then it's been shown that there are still officials of the local councils, and including, surprisingly, chairmen of some local government councils, who are also shy of the proper implementation of this decision. I mean, I'll give you an example. It took everything to try to convince some local government chairman to come on this program. They were just shy of it. And some Nigerians are saying this is because they dread repercussions from the governors. What do you think?
That's very true. The governors still have a hold on the current system that we have. But with the responsibility accruing to the authority of the local government, I think it will change the tide, it will turn the tide of event. If you listen, I think ICPC or EFCC said that any chairman whose allocation is vied or transferred to state governor will hold himself accountable. And they'll be right there breathing on their neck to make sure that they account for whatever funds accrue to the system. So for now, I wouldn't be surprised to see that some chairmen are still clamoring for the old order. If you look behind, the chairman did not win proper election. Whoever that chairman was did not win proper election. His constituency did not vote for him. But with many key players now knowing that with the authority comes some power to deliver on services and change the course of their society, many responsible individuals will come out and vie for that position. Although, as it is, you know, right now at the heel of the judgment, 21 states out of 36 states are under caretaker committee. And this has been the scenario since 2004, over 20 years. So with the change with this judgment, we will see a lot of turn around and change in fortune. Now you raised the issue of transparency and accountability. Very quickly, any responsible chairman who wants to succeed and wants to steer away EFCC and ICPC and the NFIU must have his internal auditor by his side. And any chairman who fails to work with his internal auditor, then he is brewing for a big trouble. Then the external auditor, who is the Office of the Auditor General for Local Government, will breathe. Of course, the EFCC, the NFIU, and the ICPC will do the rest. So there is no option. Whether the governors handpick anybody or not, the platform we are seeing now is a scenario in which that any chairman who takes in local government funds from now will have to render accounts for those money. And that's sure will happen. And many of them will go to prison for that.
We have another caller on the line, Jibril calling in from Yobe. Hello, Jibril, go ahead.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening, go ahead.
I'm Jibril calling from Yobe State. I would like to use this medium to really thank the president for this fine gesture, sir. But I doubt if it will work out because our 35 governors, our 35 state governors are the most corrupted people. They want this to be implemented, I assure you. Because they use this as a medium of making money. Come to Yobe State and see those who manage the local government money and see how they build mighty houses. I doubt if they continue let Tinubu achieve this goal. But I pray God is better than them.
All right. Thank you very much. Dr. Tunji Abayomi in our Lagos Network Center, what do you think should be the kind of sanctions we should be looking at here? Should any council or any state fail or, try to disrupt the smooth and the proper implementation of this?
Difficult for any council to, because for any state to do that, government of the state is constituted and bound to uphold the law. I think initial resistance is not unexpected because people are often not ready for change. But as time goes on, I believe that the state will adapt to the new bold order of fiscal independence. But there's yet another area that I think is also important that obviously is going to be enhanced by this development, and that is that no entrant people, no outstanding personalities are obviously going to go into vying to be elected into the political offices at the local government level. As you are well aware, up until now, local government is perceived generally, and even within government circles, as essentially an office in the governor's office, so to say. They come again and again at a slight invitation, and they are treated basically as a second-class government, so to say, although it's created like any other government. But anybody, like a human being, you become weakened without money to to show yourself. I think it's a Swiss bank that says money wealth talks. I mean that money talks, but wealth whispers. That money talks, but wealth whispers. So I believe that the development is going to enhance development in many angles in the country, because now, like I said, new people will come in, bold and committed, and then of course you will also have diversity of development. For example, now a local government can have works department to attend to a number of issues. I mean, is there something with the system where development in my town, Okeagbe, in Akoko, in Ondo State, is going to be controlled, whether you're talking of security, whether you're talking of agriculture, animal husbandry, roads, and so on and so forth, will be controlled from Abuja, you know. So it's a great development that I believe will enhance diversity of development. The other issue is that the people themselves will now have greater stature to demand responsibility from the local government. They will ask, I mean, money is coming to you, so what are you doing? So all in all, I believe it's a great development that needs to be pushed effectively, but at the same time, in a way that is balanced. Like I said previously, government in any state, in any democratic state, is like a human body. You have the head, you have the representing the federal government, you have the waist representing the state, and the feet representing the local government. And they are all connected to that body, like any political body.
Kenne from Makudi calling in. Hello.
Yep, hello.
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Siri. Good evening, Nigerians. Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead. Right.
All right. I believe so much in a true Nigerian system. Talking about the autonomy of this local government that has just been pronounced by the apex court in the country. I can say on my own part that is a welcome development. And one of the days where the local government enjoy their financial autonomy, today the game has changed. The politicians have used, that particular system in siphoning the local government funds. I want everybody to understand this thing in very clear terms. There is nothing in Nigerian constitution that is called the caretaker committee chairman. Nothing of such in Nigerian constitution. No page has carried that. And now, the apex court have actually clearly pronounced this, and a good Nigerian like myself would support this in very strong terms. And we believe in a true Nigeria. We believe in everything that can make and push democracy to the grassroots level at the doorsteps of the local people who comes out massively when they stand for elections to contribute their quota to nation building. These people in the local environment has been suffering so much. I want to appeal to our governors across the country. Let them embrace this particular system and give that attention, a massive attention to it. And I want to suggest to the federal government, let it be a body that can be monitoring the funds that will be going to the local government. As such, let us try as much as possible as a people to scrap the state electoral commissions totally out of the system. Bring in the federal, which is the INEC, to be conducting elections from the local government councils across the country. This is where we're going to see a little transparency in everything that goes wrong. If these kind of things happen, the pressure from the state governors or from at the state level will reduce drastically. Development will shift to the local government, and then a lot will happen in our local environment. People will see that dividend of democracy that we've been yearning for. I think this is one of the best things that have ever happened to this country in the recent time. My commendation goes to Mr. President, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and of course, whoever contributed in one way or the other in making sure that this thing has actually come to, to rest. Thank you, and God bless all of us.
Thank you very much, Kenneth from Makudi. Let's go quickly to Professor Gbemga Afolabi on Zoom. And Prof, now talk about capacity and capability. And I'm looking here at the quality of leadership at the local government level. And there are many parts of this country. It has not been very impressive, seeing the quality of the headship of local councils. Will this development improve on capacity and capability going forward? Who are those who are contesting for elective position into the local councils?
Yeah, thank you. I think with the pronouncement and, of course, with the steps being taken by the National Assembly, I believe more capable people will come forward to contest election at the local government level. I want to believe with this pronouncement as well, and the state government not having much say going forward in the recruitment, and of course in the elected positions at the local level, more capable people with ability will come forward. But I would also just like to bring up this caveat that we still need to revisit the issue of finance, the issue of revenue collection, and the issue of political independence in terms of who gets elected to those local positions. Once we are able to resolve these three key issues of revenue collection, financial management, and then political independence in terms of INEC conducting those elections, then we are going to have good people come forward at the grassroots level to take over the local councils and move it to the next level. Thank you.
All right. And Prof, let me come back to you here in the Abuja studio. A question of taxes and levies is a vexed one in this country.
Yeah.
And now, with local councils having all the powers to now expand their revenue base, how do we guarantee that all kinds of frivolous drives are not brought into place here?
Okay, well, as you know, I alluded to it earlier. The tax jurisdictions are quite clear for local governments. The taxes and levies local governments are, expected to collect. But if you take it even across all the tiers of government, you find, if you look at that schedule, you have about 60 or more, different types of taxes and levies. And that's why you see businesses are, suffocating, complaining of, multiple taxation and so on. Now, I can tell you that I'm aware that there is an ongoing effort, steps are afoot to streamline all these taxes and levies, across all the tiers of government, whether federal, state, and local government, to streamline them, under single digit. In other words, there's a plan to have them, and I told them about 60 or so, to now have just not more than, single digit, no more than 10. Now, that effort is currently being, recommended by the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. I'm aware that's one of the things they're looking at, to streamline all those taxes. So at the end of the day, by the time they're done with what they're recommending, you would find that there will be a central collection point. The Federal Inland Revenue Service, will have become the revenue service for the entire federation, collects every form of taxes and levies, and then they are now distributed, including local governments. And that's why what is happening now is very, very important. People have said it will, advance development, and I agree a lot. Cyril, if you look at the even the recent GDP figure that was released, 3.19%, you will find that it's still not strong. I want to believe that as you have more activities going on, at the local government level, okay, GDP is likely to, improve. Inflation rate is likely to come down, because at the local government level, they will have more money to even spend on agriculture. If you look at the residual list, okay, one of the assigned responsibilities of the local government is also to contribute to the development of agriculture. So they're in a stronger position to, to do that. And once the aggregate GDP improves, you expect that inflation rate, will come down. Now, look at this project the government has had over the years. I think it's been driven by SMEDAM. And you ask yourself, why hasn't it made any significant impact? I'm talking about the OLOP project. Yes, one product, one local government, one product. Yes. So every year, if you look at the budget, they allocate 1 billion naira for the entire program, all the 774 local governments. So that's infinitesimal. But with what has happened now, local governments will be in a stronger position, to do that. And because they now have their funds, you will now expect that, the normal budgeting system that you also find at the state and federal level will happen, because the executive will prepare, the legislature will enact, and then you also find, implementation and, control. If you check, those of us in, research, you want to know the total budget of the entire federation, both federal and state. You won't find that of local government. Right. Yes, the total thing we have, the figure is around 51 trillion. And that's because we know that of the federal government, and we know we can get the budgets for states, but you can't get for local governments because they are not in control of their funds. So I'm saying that this is, this promises to change a whole lot of things, in favor of the economy. Look at this issue of even the minimum wage of 70,000. With local governments now in control of their funds, they're in a stronger position to pay the minimum wage, as opposed to when the entire money is controlled by the state. And the issue of forex too, the forex pressure will reduce, because local governments, with the money is no more at the disposal of the state governors. Okay, some of whom use that to buy chess forex. So a whole lot of advantages it has.
All right. Well, we're winding down on this discussion, so we'll just go over to Professor Mohammed Kabir Isa to give us his closing thoughts in just a couple of minutes as we round off. Prof.
Cyril, my last thought is that if you look at post the July 11th decision of the Supreme Court, something significant happened. In Bauchi State, they immediately conducted local government election. And what happened? In one of the local governments, Labour Party won councillorship election. And so the people voted against PDP and APC and voted Labour Party. And Labour Party had no candidate. There was no candidate for Labour Party. So Labour Party justly to produce a candidate to fit in the position. And so we are seeing signposts of good things to happen. Now, if the Electoral Act is amended to allow for independent candidacy, we are likely to see a significant turn of events. Because as it is, governors hold, the political parties by the jugular in their states. This idea, this aberration that the political leadership of the party rests with the person in power at the state or at the federal level is something we have never seen in 1979 to 1983. So it's an aberration. A governor cannot be the leader of his party in his state. There should be a separation of power between the political leadership or the leadership of the party and the governor. In fact, I remember Shagari was invited by the chairman of NPN, then Adisa Akeloe, to come to the party secretariat and account for how he's implementing NPN agenda in his administration. But so with what we have seen in the Fourth Republic, the leader of the party is the elected or the most powerful person in the state. And so they use that to stifle political activities and truncate the rights of individuals. So with
it's all about who controls the purse, right? Oh, well, thank you so very much. And, Professor Chewaleke.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited by this development. If you go to other jurisdictions, I mentioned India, even in the US, I was reading a study that talked about the US having as many as 90,000 local governments and municipalities. Infrastructure projects are handled at the local government level. Okay, so that is where I think we should. That's where we should be headed as a country. So overall, it's something that will really transform the the economy of Nigeria.
Right. Dr. Abayomi in our Lagos Network Center, your closing comments. Your closing comments.
I think one of my colleagues raised the issue of corruption. My view is that our people, if they want good government, must consciously fight against corruption. I believe that corruption messes up everything in this country. In fact, it impedes development. The major deterrent to development in our country is leadership corruption, particularly heads of institutions and agencies, bodies, and so on and so forth. They have uncontrolled and uncontrollable appetite, So if we are going to fight corruption, even at the local government level, the people must be conscious. The price of eternal something is vigilance, so to say. So that's really the issue for us. But I believe that as we get more and more distinguished citizens vying for governance at the local level, the administration, management of resources, the use of government for purposes of developing the people and their community will certainly improve. Our people should take more interest in looking into what happens in government, because government is constituted to serve the people. As of today in our country, largely government serves itself, particularly the people in government, and it should be the reverse.
And Professor Afolabi from Ile-Ife.
Thank you. My comments will focus on the enforcement mechanism because the whole topic we've been discussing since is focused on enforcing local government autonomy. Now, enforcement comes in two parts. There's positive enforcement and there's negative enforcement. And when we talk about positive enforcement, we talk about rewards who adhere to the Supreme Court judgment, they should have reward. And for those who will go against or will be hesitant to obey that Supreme Court pronouncement, there should be sanctions. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. And well, this is where we'll have to leave this conversation. I always say no one program can take care of all the issues. I'd like to thank our guests, Professor Uche Uwaleke, Professor of Finance and Capital, Nasarawa State University, here in our Abuja studio.
Capital markets.
Capital markets, yes. Sorry. Finance and Capital Market, yes. Nasarawa State University. Thanks for being here with us in our Abuja studio. And Professor Muhammad Kabir Isa, Professor of Governance and Development, who joined us from Kaduna studio. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. And you're on sabbatical at the NTA, the Department of Political Science and Defense Studies, and we acknowledge that you've been with us in the past from the Department of Local Government Administration and Governance at the ABU. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thanks. And of course, Professor Gbemiga Afolabi, Head of Department Political Science of Obafemi Awolowo University in Ile-Ife, who joined us via Zoom. Thank you for being here. And thanks also to all those who called in and were part of this program. We appreciate you being a part of the discussion. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.